And what if I told you that before Adam stepped into Eden, there was already a war happening in heaven? And what if the creation story you've known since childhood was just a summary, an edited version, censored, adapted so you wouldn't ask the right questions? There is a book. It was hidden for centuries, burned, banned, called heresy. But in 1947, in the caves of Qumran, it emerged from the shadows. And what was written there rewrites everything. Its name is the Book of Jubilees. And today, you're going to discover why they tried to erase it from history. Imagine an ancient text, so ancient it was written even before Christ was born. A manuscript that early Christians read with reverence, but then it simply disappeared, vanished from churches, removed from lists of sacred books, erased from official records. For more than 1,000 years, the Book of Jubilees was considered lost. Some scholars thought it had never truly existed, that it was just a legend, a myth among mystics. But in 1947, a Bedouin shepherd threw a stone into a cave in the Judean desert, and he heard the sound of something breaking. When he entered to investigate, he found ceramic jars sealed for 2,000 years. Inside them, perfectly preserved scrolls of parchment. They were the Dead Sea Scrolls, and among them, fragments of the Book of Jubilees. When scholars began translating those texts, they realized something disturbing. That book wasn't just another forgotten apocrypha. It was an alternative version of Genesis, more detailed, more complex, and infinitely more unsettling, because the Book of Jubilees doesn't just tell what happened. It reveals why it happened. It names the angels, describes their hierarchies, explains their falls, and shows that the history of humanity began long before the sixth day of creation, and perhaps that's exactly why it was banned. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You know this phrase. But what the Book of Jubilees reveals is that this creation wasn't the first thing God did. Before everything, before light, before time, God created 7 classes of spirits. 7 orders of angelic beings, each with a specific function in the cosmic order. They weren't created on the first day. They already existed when the first day began, and the text is clear. These angels were created to serve, to worship, to administer the creation that didn't even exist yet. They were the invisible architects, the guardians of celestial laws, the silent observers who would witness everything that was to come. Mastema, Azazel, Semyaza, names you may have never heard, but which the Book of Jubilees mentions without fear. It describes them not as abstract demons, but as real angels with identities, with choices, with destinies. And then comes the part that changes everything. God creates man, Adam, not just a clay doll that came to life, but a being made in God's image, crowned with glory, invested with authority over all creation. And the angels are ordered to bow down before him. Imagine the scene. Beings of pure light who existed since before time, being instructed to kneel before a creature made of earth. Some obeyed, but others refused. And it was in that moment, in that silent rejection, that evil entered the universe. The Book of Jubilees describes this rebellion not as a sudden event, but as a slow erosion, a growing dissatisfaction, a resentment that was transforming into hatred. And when the fall finally happened, it wasn't just spiritual, it was literal. Genesis mentions quickly, almost like a footnote, and that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took wives for themselves. 6 lines, nothing more, but the Book of Jubilees dedicates entire chapters to this event. And what it reveals is terrifying. 200 angels descended, not by accident, not by impulse, but through a pact. They gathered on Mount Hermon and made a solemn oath. They knew what they were about to do was an irreversible transgression. So they swore to each other that whatever happened, none of them would back down, that the guilt would be shared equally, that they would fall together, and then they descended. The text describes how these angels, called the Watchers, took physical forms, how they mixed with humanity, how they taught secrets that should not have been revealed. Metallurgy, cosmetics, pharmacy, astrology, magic, knowledge that accelerated civilization but also corrupted it, and the women who united with them gave birth to a race of giants, the Nephilim, creatures of immense strength and insatiable appetite. The Book of Jubilees describes how these giants began to devour everything, animals, plants, and eventually each other. And then humans. The earth was filled with violence, not just war, but a type of evil that had never existed before. A corruption that began in the blood and spread to the soul. And God looked at the creation he had called very good and saw that it was unrecognizable. It was then that he decided the flood. But here's the detail that the Book of Jubilees adds, and that changes everything. God didn't just destroy humanity in the flood. He was destroying the hybrids. He was cleansing the genetic lineage. He was removing from the earth everything that had been contaminated by the mixture between the celestial and the earthly. And Noah wasn't chosen by chance. The text is specific. Noah was found perfect in his generations. Not just righteous, but genetically pure, without mixture, without angelic contamination. The flood wasn't just a moral judgment. It was a cosmic sterilization. But perhaps the strangest and most fascinating aspect of the Book of Jubilees is its obsession with time. The book isn't just a narrative. It's a calendar. Each event in biblical history is dated with mathematical precision. How many years, how many months, how many days have passed since creation? Everything recorded in cycles of 7, weeks of years, jubilees. And the text makes it clear, this calendar isn't arbitrary. It was revealed to Moses by an angel on Mount Sinai, written on celestial tablets that have existed since before the foundation of the world. And this calendar differs radically from the lunar calendar that the Jews adopted later. Why does this matter? Because the Book of Jubilees affirms that the demons themselves corrupted the calendar, that one of Mastema's strategies, the prince of evil spirits, was to make humanity lose track of sacred time, to make feasts be celebrated on the wrong days, for Sabbaths to be profaned without anyone noticing. Imagine, what if the way we measure time today were itself part of an ancient corruption? What if the cycles we follow disconnected us from the divine rhythms we should be following? The Book of Jubilees suggests that there is a celestial time, eternal, immutable, recorded in the heavens, and that the earth lost synchrony with it, that we are living literally outside of God's time. And here's something that will keep you awake at night. The book prophesies that before the end, this calendar would be restored, that a remnant would rediscover the true time, that there would be a return to the original order. And in 1947, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, it was discovered that the Qumran community, the Essenes, followed exactly the calendar of the Book of Jubilees. They separated themselves from the rest of Judaism because they believed that Jerusalem had abandoned God's time. They were waiting, preparing, preserving the knowledge for the moment when it would be needed again. In the midst of all this narrative of fall, corruption, and judgment, the Book of Jubilees reveals something that Genesis only suggests. The story of redemption didn't begin with Jesus. It began in the Garden of Eden. When Adam and Eve sinned, God didn't just expel them from paradise. He made a promise, and the Book of Jubilees records this promise with details that don't appear in any other biblical text. God said to Adam, "I will restore everything, not just you, but all of creation. The angels who fell will be judged, the demons will be destroyed, death will be defeated, and you, Adam, you will return to Eden, not as a visitor, but as a son, restored to his inheritance." And then God did something unprecedented. He taught Adam to offer sacrifices, not just as a ritual, but as a rehearsal, a prophetic memorial. Each sacrificed animal represented the promise that one day, God himself would become the final sacrifice. The Book of Jubilees describes how Adam, after being expelled from Eden, built an altar, how he offered the first incense, the first lamb, the first grain offerings. and how God descended, enveloped the altar in fire, and accepted the offering. And then something extraordinary. The text says that God sealed a covenant with Adam, a covenant that would be renewed with Noah, then with Abraham, then with Moses. Always the same covenant, always the same promise. And this covenant had a symbol, the Sabbath. The Book of Jubilees affirms that the Sabbath wasn't instituted only at Sinai. It was established at creation, that God kept the seventh day as an eternal sign of his rest, of his dominion, of his promise of restoration, and that everyone who keeps the Sabbath is, somehow, connected with this celestial reality, is living within God's memory, is rehearsing Eden. So after all this, the question remains, why was the Book of Jubilees removed from the Bible? Officially, because it contained details that couldn't be verified, because it seemed contradictory in some points with Genesis, because its origin was uncertain. But perhaps the truth is simpler and more disturbing. The Book of Jubilees challenges control. It places in the hands of common people access to mysteries that were reserved for few. It names demons. It describes angelic hierarchies. It details covenants, calendars, laws, and prophecies that don't pass through the filter of religious authority. And more, it affirms that God's true lineage isn't institutional. It isn't clerical. It's personal. It's a direct covenant, a relationship that each individual can have with the Creator, without intermediaries, without permissions, without censorship. Perhaps that's why it was banned, because books that empower people have always been dangerous for systems that depend on ignorance, and perhaps that's why it resurfaced exactly when it resurfaced. In 1947, right after World War II, right before the creation of the State of Israel, in the same year that the nuclear age began, as if God were saying, it's time for you to know, it's time to understand, because what's coming will require you to know the complete story. So in the end, what does the Book of Jubilees really reveal? It reveals that the story you learned was true, but incomplete, that Genesis wasn't wrong, just summarized. That the events that shaped creation, the fall, the flood, and the promise of redemption were much more complex, much more intense, much more real than any Sunday sermon ever managed to convey. It reveals that evil isn't abstract. It has a name, it has history, it has strategies, and that the war that began before Adam hasn't ended yet. It reveals that you're living in the middle of a cosmic narrative, that your choices matter, that your spiritual lineage is being written now, and that the ending of this story hasn't been decided yet. And perhaps, just perhaps, it reveals that the truth was never forbidden to control you. It was hidden to protect you until you were ready to carry it. Are you ready now? If this video stirred something inside you, leave a comment. Tell us, do you think this book should return to the Bible? Or do you understand why it was removed? And if you want to continue discovering secrets that have been hidden for centuries, subscribe to the channel. But only subscribe if you have the courage to question everything you were taught, because the truth, it doesn't liberate alone. It requires courage.